that humanity now dominates nature in fundamental ways. Humanity changes the carbon cycle. Humanity changes the water cycle. Humanity changes the nitrogen cycle. Humanity changes the phosphorus cycle. Humanity changes the world's biological diversity. Humanity changes the climate. Even for those of us coming for 30 years to China, like myself, know that Beijing is becoming drier and warmer, and we feel both. And all over the world, the climate is changing rapidly. I spent many of the past 12 months in a crisis zone in Africa, in the Horn of Africa, where tens of millions of people are hungry because of prolonged drought. And more recently in West Africa, closer to the ambassador's home, in the dry region of the Sahel, just south of the Sahara, where drying has led to hunger and to instability and violence. In Mali, where a coup took place, people are hungry because they don't have enough to eat, because they can't produce their crops, because the weather has changed already during the last 20 years for lower rainfall, higher temperatures, more drought, more hunger. And ladies and gentlemen, be sure we've only begun the Anthropocene. China's leadership is inevitable now. 30 years ago, China constituted about 2% of the world's production. Now it is 15%. By 2017, according to the International Monetary Fund, it will be 18%, slightly larger than the United States. Just two countries, China and the United States, will constitute more than a third of total world production. And roughly 40% of the greenhouse gases that are changing the world's climate, affecting China itself and affecting the world. I have no doubt about the responsibility and seriousness of China's leadership in this regard, but we have to have very serious concerns about the scale of the challenge ahead of us. We cannot stop with simply feeling good about some solar project here or some wind farm here or a nice development someplace else. Nature is doing a different arithmetic. Nature cares about the total emissions, the total nitrogen, the total phosphorus use, the depletion of groundwater. And whatever we say to feel good, the truth will be recorded in natural outcomes. The extent of our challenge is unprecedented in history because the world aspires to economic development. And as a development economist who has worked 30 years for economic development, I aspire to it as well. And I champion the cause of developing countries to develop. But I am aware of the global arithmetic now. If we continue on the current trajectory, we will destroy the basis for the global food supply within generations. We already have instability in the food supply. We have hungry regions like the Horn of Africa and the Sahel already impacted by the Anthropocene. If we continue on our 4% per year global growth and make growth the end of all, it will become the bad end of all. Because the climate cannot bear what we are doing at a greater scale, and yet that is our trajectory right now. So I want to emphasize how big the challenge is. We must move beyond feeling good about specific examples. My own country, the United States, has failed miserably to play a leadership role for 20 years, failed miserably because of the power of our corporate lobbies in oil and gas and other sectors. So we have wasted 20 years where we did not take these challenges seriously. We need to be on a different course now. And how are we ever going to get on that course? We need fundamentally to decarbonize our energy system globally. We need to reduce by half, at least, the emissions of carbon dioxide each year, even as the world economy grows 3 or 4 times in the next 40 years. This is an unprecedented human challenge. We are a fossil fuel world economy, and yet we cannot go on this way safely for China, America, Europe, Africa, or the rest of the world. It's impossible. Nature will not let us do it. Even if we deny it, it won't matter. Our spin will not matter. Our public relations will not matter. What will matter is the amount of carbon in the atmosphere in 2030, 2040, 2050. Our current trajectory is unsustainable. We need fundamentally to change how we grow food, to make the food supply globally resilient to a changing climate, and to ensure that the food system itself does not destroy the environment. We're using 100 million metric tons of nitrogen. It's poisoning the waterways. And yet there's more food demand and a rising world population. We need better technology, better approaches, better regulation. 4 days ago, I was at a wonderful research center in the Philippines called the International Rice Research Institute. They helped to create China and India's green revolution in rice 40 years ago by developing the seed varieties to feed Asia. They are now developing new varieties that are resistant to drought, resistant to temperature, resistant to salinity. And yet, do you know they are not properly funded? They can't even keep their research funded now because the world is not paying attention, ladies and gentlemen, to the very dangerous path that we are on. The good news is we have technologies, methodologies, new biological approaches, new social and human approaches to address these challenges. And yet, our social systems are so entrenched, the momentum is so great, the rate of economic growth is so fast, that we may find ourselves in deep peril. And Africa already is in deep peril because of what's happening from outside before we adjust our ways of action. We need a fundamentally different approach, and especially a different consciousness of the scale of the challenge. We need to enter the Anthropocene with our eyes open. We need to embrace values of sustainable development. Next month, the world will assemble the leadership in Rio de Janeiro, 20 years after the Rio Conference of 1992. In 1992, 3 treaties were signed in Rio de Janeiro: the Climate Change Treaty, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and the Convention to Combat Desertification. 3 wonderful treaties signed by all the world's governments. Not one of these treaties was put into operation. Not one of these treaties has changed the course of humanity. My country bears principal responsibility, I'm afraid, because during those 20 years, the United States was the world's leading economy, and it did almost nothing to honor those 3 treaties. In the next 20 years, China will be the world's largest economy. And we cannot go on another 20 years as we have the past 20 years. People's lives are already in peril. Come with me to Africa, you'll see it yourself. No fault of these people. Their climate is changing. They cannot survive this way. And this will be a phenomenon everywhere if we continue blindly the next 20 years as we have continued the past 20 years. That is why this forum is so important. We are at a juncture, whether we like it or not, whether it's politically convenient or not, whether it fits the US presidential cycle or not. It doesn't matter to nature. We need to change course, bigger, more powerfully, more organized way than any of us imagines, because we're 7 billion people on the planet. We produce $10,000 per person. We're a $70 trillion economy, doubling every 18 years in size now, and we're unsustainable with what we're doing. So I want to congratulate this forum. I want to urge you to take on the scale of the challenge, because scale is the essence of this. Feeling good is not the essence of this problem. Nice examples are not the essence of this problem. Finding a way for 7 billion people now, 8 billion people by 2025, and 9 billion people by 2045 to live harmoniously is the challenge. We all look to China to help provide vital leadership in this. What China has accomplished in this world is unprecedented. And we know that China's leadership is crucial. We see it every day in Africa, as the ambassador said. China is making Africa's development speed like has not happened before. The possibilities for finding a better path are present. Bringing together China's leaders and the world's leaders on this task is the highest priority. I want to thank the Hanwang Forum for taking on that challenge and for giving me the opportunity to be with you at this inaugural event. Thank you very much.